Hello. I kind of making this video to explain my little problems with this vehicle right now. Right, I was given the task from the customer to do an engine harness for this car. Right, the the problems I start having with this car is the state that the harness was in. Right, the harness came cut up, broken connectors, a lot of missing missing sensor. The crankshaft sensor we noticed that was cut as well. This engine didn't have four coil packs. It actually had two coil packs at the given time, right? Also we had a problem with the ABS not matching up because this engine was taken out of a Sonata Benz, I assume that it came out of. Um, so my job was to make a harness for this vehicle, right, and incorporate it back into this vehicle. So I went to see the job. Um, I spoke to the customer and tell them they thought actually it was just a plug and play system from the harness before that they had, right? They thought it was just a plug and play system. When I went and saw the harness to see, the majority of the connectors was not matching up. There only was, I think, one main connector was plugging into the fuse box, and then there was one inside in the interior as well. The others were not pluggable or not plug and play, to be honest, right? There was an issue with this fuse box as well, that somebody placed all the relay wrong side, all the fuses them, some was blown, some was in the wrong place, different size fuse, all kind of thing with this fuse box, right? I don't know what happened previously, and this fuse box was there's a main fusible link inside it that is with 50 amps, and somehow, I don't know how, they ended up burning or either corrosion or whatever damaged that fusible link. I don't know how that damaged, and all the rest are links perfect except the 50 amp. I don't understand that, right? There was also burn marks in the fuse box. There was a burnt fuse, right? I did a temporary repair. They have to change this box, else it wouldn't work as how it should, right? I did a repair just to get the vehicle running and so on, right? This vehicle had a lot of problems, stating more mechanical than electrical. This vehicle came with no coolant, right? No brake fluid, right? And there was a lot of one or two transmission leaks and things like that, but we consider that as not a problem. That is minor thing. Um, so my job was to wire the vehicle. I did my wiring within the period of 1 month. I did it was supposed to be 1 month I was supposed to finish, but it turned out to be more than a month because of the amount of work and the amount of time I spent on this vehicle. Right. When I was ready to get this vehicle started, the vehicle was making an attempt to start. Right. We pulled the coils and we saw that number 2 and 3 was no spark, and number 1 and 4 was sparking, but they had two coils at the given time, right? What we noticed was the engine was showing signs of wanting to start. What I mean by that is it was smoking as it should be. It should be giving out that smoke like if our engine wanted to start. Little to my knowledge, this engine was out of timing at the given time. I thought they didn't touch the timing on this engine. I didn't know that at the time. Right, the engine was out of timing, and I at the given time we didn't know understand what was the given issues, right? Because there's a lot of things. Remember, I had to rewire this vehicle, rewire the computer, rewire this harness to accept into this vehicle because this engine is not from this vehicle. I had to make it acceptable, right? So what I did, called the customer and I talked to his friend as well, and they decided to get a mechanic to come after 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 that, the mechanic came. Well, actually, before the mechanic came, they asked us if we could remove the engine and transmission. We was assuming that there was a bolt or something that caused any torque converter to get tight on the transmission, that caused any tight spot in the engine. Because when we was trying to turn over the engine by hand, there was a slight tight spot that we was getting, but we was only getting that in one space, right? So we decided to pull the engine, put it on the ground, put it on the ground, separate it, and see what's up. We did the same thing. We pulled out the engine. The customer was here as well, helped us pull out the engine as well, right? He helped me pull out the engine. We put the engine on the ground and we turned the engine, and we were still feeling the tight spot. So the customer and his friend decided that we could call the mechanic. The mechanic came, he checked the engine and so on, and he saw that the timing was out, and a lot of timing was out. It wasn't just a tooth off or a tooth off, it was a good bit of degrees out. I assume in 180 degrees out, right? So the mechanic came, he took the engine. While he retimed the engine, he also checked the oil because we wasn't getting no oil pressure. What he had noticed was the oil was sludge. And I don't know if this engine was left open or the oil just turned to sludge. When our engine sitting for a while, it could turn to, the oil could get very terrible to put into that solution, right? So at that given time, the mechanic fixed all those issues, bring it back, and we put it in, right? So at that point in time, I wasn't completely finished with the wiring, so we was just able. The mechanic just came and dropped off the engine. We talked a little bit, real cool guys. That was very nice to us, and we decided to put the engine back in the next 2 days or 3 days or however long we took to put in the engine. And because I'm not only working on this vehicle, I'm working on a few vehicles as well. So what I decided was to put back in this engine. We got the engine started, but the engine was not slowing down. The engine was just idling at 4,000 rpm. I know engine could idle at 4,000 rpm. So at that given time, we was talking with the customer and his friend as well, and we were trying to figure out what is the problem. So at the given time, I was blocking off all the hoses, the IAC, the throttle body, the PCV, the brakes booster, the mass flow. I'm sorry, not mass flow. MAF sensor, right? We tried blocking off a whole set of other things to see where this air coming from. Nothing to prevail, right? So we decided that to talk to the customer again, and they say they will send the mechanic. The mechanic came, found out that it was a bad gasket that was allowing a lot of air into the engine. So we decided, okay, they will come and fix the issue. They put back in the gasket. Very nice. The same mechanics them came and put it in, right? At that given time, the engine was behaving very good at that point, and it was late in the night, so I told the customer the engine is idling, and is idling perfectly well from what we could see at the given time of the night. It was very late at that night, and it was about 12 o'clock. And from that standpoint, we decided that in the morning we would let the vehicle run for a little while and figure out how the vehicle is, because I wanted to carry it on the road. I was telling the customer that we wanted to carry it on the road. So the engine was idling for about 5-6 minutes or so, until let me just do a little check and thing, move my hand around the coil packs and make sure they're seated and stuff, like make sure everything's seated before I go on the road. And in doing so, I touched number 1 coil pack. Keep in mind that there was only 2 coil packs at the given time. So I dropped number 1 coil pack, which is hooked up to number 4 as well. So at that given time, that coil pack was so hot that I couldn't even hold my hand there. It was getting extremely hot. So I shut off the car and I waited for it to cool down. I unplugged the battery and everything, let the car cool down. And keep in mind that we had temporary coolant lines and stuff like that, so we had coolant running through the engine, so no overheating or anything like that, right? at that given time, it was so hot. So I said, let me just rest the vehicle for a little bit. There might be a little issue with the coil or something, some little thing causing the issue. So I decided I'll plug back on the battery, start the car again. And as soon as I start the car and I put my hand back on the coil pack started to get hot like fire again. So I say, okay, I'm gonna take out the coil. I did a coil resistance test, and the coil resistance was low. No, sorry, the coil resistance was high. My apologies, it was high. So I took out the coil and I put back in. No, I didn't put back in anything yet. I talked to the customer. The customer said, okay, it was supposed to be $600 for a coil, which is a lot. So we talked to him, and all of us was coming up with the idea that we should put cheaper coil packs, that if anything have to happen in the future, that the customer could just run in a parts place or a parts store and just get a new coil pack to put in perspective, right? So we came up with trying 1NZ coils, HR15, QG coils, some other brands as well, right? I ended up with the QG because the QG was the most common here since we have Nissan down here, right? At the given time. So I say here, I tell the customer it's a bad coil, you will get some coils. Put in some coils, some new brand coils. Number 2 coil exploded. Sorry about the interruption. My apologies about the noise at the given time, right? Right now, we placed in 4 QG 18 coils, e-throttle coils, because we heard that the cable type the cable type QG 18 and 15, they carry the same part number, but they are actually different coils. So we decided that we will put these coils and see what's up. In my diagnosis, the coil number 2 started to explode. I find that funny. So we took out the coil pack and we took out the plug. Right? The plug was crushed right down, touching the electrode. The ground point on the plug was touching the electrode. So we find that funny. So okay, we placed in another plug, a good plug. Placed in another plug. Placed in a new coil pack as well. And the same thing happened again. The coil pack get hot. And we took back out the spark plug and we saw that the gap has been closed in. So I told the customer it's looking like a mechanical issue. Right? I told the customer. They couldn't believe it was a mechanical issue. At the time, I didn't know what was going on either. So I got a friend of mine to come give me a little help over here. We took out all the plugs, we took out all the coil packs, and we did our measurements, we did voltage check, and we noticed that the volt... No, I think I did that before my friend came. We did a voltage check, we noticed that there was voltage constantly going to the coil packs there. And that is what would cause the coil pack to actually explode at the given time. So we say, okay, I'll talk to him, he'll come, he'll give him a little hand. When he came, he saw that number 2 cylinder was actually sitting lower than the rest of them. If you notice, number 2 cylinder is a lot lower at the given time, right? Right. At the given time, we didn't know why. We thought by pressing them in, they would have fit in, right? But that wasn't the problem. It was actually the plug at the given moment. I just placed back in the plug so you could see what's going on, right? At the given time, the plug was missing a copper washer. We did not know that these engines them had copper washers. Nothing in the manual stated that these engines them have copper washers. We don't know if that is how it's supposed to be, right, at the given time, right? So what we decided was we will put in some spacers, and I told the customer I would play for the plugs. So I put in some iridium plugs into the cylinder and put back on the coil packs, and another coil pack exploded. So upon talking to the customer and explaining what to do, We started back the vehicle. We started the vehicle, and upon doing so, I just wait for that.
3 pounds of 20, 7 pounds of 40, Billy mixers, 7 pounds of 40, 7 big good crew, 10
My
pounds of
apologies,
50,
right. As I was stating, at the given time we changed out the plug, the coils we changed out those two coils, that the number two coil that was given trouble, we switched out that. When we switched out that, the same thing happened again. The coil exploded. Okay, we know something up there now. So okay, I said okay, looking like a mechanical issue still, right? And I talked to the thing. They say check back my wiring. So I check back my wiring again. Check back my wiring. I say okay. I say it's possible that the crankshaft was given a false reading to the computer and causing that driver to go high, right? Because we noticed that the engine was idling perfect. So that's why we didn't think it was a computer issue at the given time, right? That was bad diagnosis on my time. I see that heat that coil pack was coming up. I should have known that something was wrong. We did some tests on the injectors as well. We saw that they were all pulsing. Number 1 coil pack was pulsing, number 4 coil pack, but number 2 coil pack and number 3 coil pack no spark. So I told them, here what? Let me get a computer. The first question they asked me is, who going to pay for that coil pack? And that I'm sorry, not coil pack, computer. Who going to pay for that computer? So I was extremely upset because the reason why who going to pay for the computer is not my vehicle, right? It's not my wiring who caused it, right? And they said who going to pay for it. So talking and talking and talking and talking and talking, I just tell them, I say, hey what, I will just get the computer. Forget about it. I will pay for the computer. I just get fed up and I say I'll pay for the computer. So we ended up getting the customer help us got a location for a computer, paid for the computer, went and collect the computer as well, but no charge of the customer. I went and collect the computer and I bring it back and I plug it in. The car don't want to start now. So the car went from starting on 2 cylinders now to starting not at all. But we was hearing the fuel pump running. So I say okay. I talk to the customer. Alright, we say okay, the next day now. When I took a look inside that computer, it was full of corrosion. And we was told by the person who sold us that the computer was sitting on sitting in a good area. Nothing was sitting there. What had happened was moisture got in the computer because these are not sealed computers. They are open computers. So there was a lot of corrosions and stuff like that who went into the computer them. And we told the customer, say okay, I don't know what to do for you. We still need our computer. So the customer said spray it out. So I sprayed it out and I say okay, I'll get back to you. And spraying it out did something because the car started, but still no spark on 1 on 4. So I find that funny now. And the same thing happened again at 1 on 4. But this time the coil pack was not exploding. So I did my test again. I saw no voltage on that line. So I say okay. The only thing is the computer was not pulling back up the voltage and then not grounding it back. So the coil pack wasn't getting a sparks in it. It must be oscillating at the given time. It was not doing that. So I told the customer, I said, okay, we could get it repaired. Customer, one of the customer friends say, nah, he ain't know if the customer go got the computer repaired and so on. So I was like, okay, given the circumstance, right? No, not a problem. We will see if we get next computer, right? That's not a problem. On behalf of looking at the computer and so on, we couldn't locate one. So after a week, we say, okay, we will get it repaired. I carried a guy, and the customer friend actually was constantly calling and trying to get updates and all kind of thing about if the computer repaired and thing. I was like, the guy needs some time to check it. I can't just give the man a computer and expect it to be repaired at a given time. So I told the guy, I say, here what, next week, I think I told him or something like that, or Tuesday I told him. So today is Tuesday. I ended up calling the computer guy this morning, and the computer guy say he had to change a chip. I say okay, no problem. So I'll pay for that. Upon talking to the customer friend, it seems like they're not understanding that I had nothing to do with this causing that issue, because I didn't put any plugs, right? I did not put any plugs. I only put in the plugs after the issue, so I didn't put in the plugs, right? Right? When I got this engine, the amount of things I fixed on this engine, I know it look a little scrappy, I think now, because I had to pull back out my wiring now again to neaten it up again, because this is about the 10th time I'm pulling out these connection again, right? There's a lot of testing involved, I think, because what happens, a whole harness had to make for them, right? This car came with no battery. Right now, there's have a fuel leak underneath the car. That is not my job. And I still told the customer I would help him out, right? This car came with no brakes fluid. I say, okay, no problem. I put some brakes fluid in, right? This car came with a whole set of missing sensor and cut up harness. And my job was to wiring the harness to the vehicle, to make a harness to work with the vehicle, right? My job wasn't to buy all those connectors and put in this and put in that. Every connector in here was dry rotted, to put it into perspective, right? If they wanted a Haltech or a Max or something like that, then I could make a custom harness for this vehicle, right? So I had to wire this vehicle like if it's a Trajet, right? So I did just that. I did my thing. We hook up the tach, I hook up the oil pressure, and all kind of thing. Because on top of that, when the timing was out, there was no oil pressure as well. On top of that, right? The starter went through with the amount of cranking and cranking and cranking, trying to get this engine to start. The customer knows that. We changed the solenoid. I didn't even charge him for a starter rebuild, because normally we start a starter rebuild, we just charge for that, right? I did a compression check. I did a spark test. I did a fuel check, right? We did a resistance. We did voltage. We did a lot of tests on this vehicle, right? And there was a lot of work that I should not be doing on this vehicle, and I ended up doing everything on this vehicle. So I know it's a long video trying to explain my frustration with this vehicle. There's a lot of things that was not initially for me. My job was just to wire it in and get the car started. My job is not to get the vehicle running, right? What I mean is on the road and all them kind of thing, right? It changed to that, right? Because they want to drive the car from here back to the house, and that is about an hour and a half drive, right? Right? I am telling them at the given moment. My job wasn't to wire back no ABS. My job wasn't to do that. I did all that. I wire back in the ABS. I wire back in the wiper motor, because all those things was going through the main hand. So I had to rewire the whole car, basically. ABS. I had to rewire. I had to rewire the parking control switch. I had to rewire the crankshaft, the camshaft, the transmission, and all I had to rewire too. Because everything for this vehicle that the harness they gave me was broken. So I had to do over that, right? I had to pull the whole dashboard out. I had to cut those wiring and make quick disconnect connectors for the customer, so the customer could put in any engine he wants, do quick diagnosis. I did all that for them, right? I had to cut the steering column. I had to rewire the ignition switch too, because the ignition switch was damaged. I had to rewire the inside fuse box. I had to rewire the outside fuse box, right? I had to rewire a lot of stuff that I should not have been doing, because that was not my job. My job was to get this car started with this harness, to make a harness with this, right? It wasn't supposed to be ABS something, and I still did all those things for him, right? And I still didn't charge him for all them things. But now they are making trouble that them want to know how the car was idling and perfect, and it was. I told them the vehicle at the given night that we got the car started, when everything was running properly, was the engine wasn't shaking, and it wasn't. It probably had a little vibration and thing, but I might not think the engine after so long never worked. So I say okay. So that night we got the car started. The car still starting and idling and no rough idling, but as the car heat up and the ISC changed the value of the RPM, then you see the shaking. And then we was able to diagnose that there was no spark. So when I told the customer, yeah, everything working, because the car was turning up the RPM and making it look like Nothing, no spark wasn't missing at the time. It was looking like spark wasn't missing at the time. But not until the vehicle was heat up and everything. Now the vehicle slowed down an RPM now to idle long. It was misfiring because it could drive on two cylinders. It just wouldn't have no power. Basically. And we was all surprised that the the vehicle was able to run on two cylinders and move as well, right? Please keep in mind that we had to bleed over all the brakes and stuff like this in this vehicle, right? There was a lot of holes and going all over. They say they revamped the coolant system. We had to do over the whole coolant system and modify the coolant system. There was too much rubbish going everywhere, right? There was too much hoses going everywhere. Even down the exhaust and all missing gasket. The belts, we had to change the belts on the engine because there's the wrong belts too, right? What else? Oh, and an engine mount to rebuild to me. Even charge the customer for a mount because I had to rebuild a mount to make it fit for this engine because this engine would have break out that mount, right? I had to rewire all the park neutral switch and I had to wire back park reverse neutral drive and 2-on-1 for this car. Everything going through the main harness. So I rewire all that for them because you see this is not the original engine and transmission. So I rewire that for them as well. Inside the computer that they gave me, those connectors are brittle, so we decided that we could go off of that.